Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Home Building Hub. You're with Colin and co-host Darren Brennan as always. And today, Darren, we're going to talk about the top 5 mistakes new home buyers make. Now, this is going to piggyback off last week's episode where we sort of gave us 2025, predictions. And for those who are out there ready to get out there and do some shopping or at least some planning and some research, these are the 5 things that we encourage you to not do or to be mindful of to help you with beginning your journey. Daz, how are you today, mate?
Yeah, going well, mate. Going real well. Looking forward to, pumping through this episode. It should be short and sharp, so let's see if we can get in and out in 15 minutes, Cole. And, hopefully that's just a nice little drive in your car while you're driving to work and you can just have a quick listen to this one and just not fall for these traps that we often see people fall for. So,
yeah,
mate, let's rip in, I reckon.
Go for it. Kick off with number 1, mate.
Number 1 is they shop before getting finance advice. And why is that important? Why do we advise you don't go shopping before you get finance advice? I guess it's to avoid the disappointment and realization that you cannot afford the home that you've now decided you want and have fallen in love with. So you don't want to get to that point that you go in and, you've sort of gone, wow, I love this joint. And now, shit, okay, I actually borrow the money to do that. And that's always pretty disappointing and puts you way back on the back foot. I guess people often don't take into account the other money needed. So for things like stamp duty, lenders, mortgage insurance, a conveyancer, some of the connection costs that you're going to have to pay aren't accounted for. And again, you end up being short on money. And, so if you get that conversation going with your broker, they'll look at all that stuff, put that into context and say, that's how much you can borrow for land and that's how much you can borrow for a house. And they'll really help advise you. And the other part is there's often some misconception around how much money do you actually need. The broker will help you with that. And there are some really good government schemes out there that'll be able to help you. So you may not need as much as you think, or you may need more than you think. Broker's going to help you through that. The last one is they go to one lender only, right? They don't realize that different lenders will potentially lend more money and be more flexible in their lending policy. So one lender might lend to you, someone else might not. They may not take any more loans in a certain suburb, right? Because they've overcapitalized in that suburb and they don't want to be highly exposed. So again, talking to your broker, getting that finance advice before you go shopping will help avoid disappointment.
Yeah, totally agree. Seen it like literally 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Where people do that over the years and they get excited. We get it. You get excited. You want to go shopping, see the displays and all the pretty things. But the reality is you should just give all the docs that the broker needs to them. Get a capacity, what your budget, what your max is, and then start shopping for something a touch under that. That's our advice. Tip number 1. Makes sense, Darren. Number 2 for me, one of the mistakes people make, number 2, is that they listen to Uncle Gary a little more than need be. Now, we refer to Uncle Gary as perhaps family or friends or barbecue bandits or all of those people in the same category, basically giving you lots and lots of advice without having too much experience in recent times in building a new home. It's pretty similar, the situation, to when someone announces a pregnancy. All the advice comes, this is how you raise a baby, this is how you do this is how you do that. Like, I've seen it with my friends a lot of times, and we just say to them, hey, if you want to find out what we did in a situation, we'll tell you what we did. It doesn't make it right for you. And this is no different, right? If there was one way to raise a child, there'd be one book. Uncle Gary, barbecue bandits, all that sort of stuff, they are of the same nature. They're telling you maybe a lot of the time they don't have the experience, they haven't built a house for however many years and things like that. They're telling you what they heard some person throwaway line on the news and things like that. Traditionally, the Uncle Gary comments throw a bit of fear into buyers, no matter what industry, to be honest with you. So
Absolutely.
that's what we're talking about. Not saying disregard your family and friends' commentary. We're saying take it with a grain of salt. Go and talk to some experts, talk to land people, talk to builders, do some homework, listen to episodes that we've got here for you that will actually educate you on what to expect, how to do it. Everything you need to know is here. Okay, so don't be swung too far by Uncle Gary, is number two. We see it all the time.
Absolutely. Number three, mate. They buy a block of land without speaking with the builder first. And what could go wrong there, Colin?
Oh,
Maybe that starts with big one would be that with the new NCC regulations, right? This has been never more important right now. Is even with a small amount of fall on a block, and I was looking at one just yesterday for one of my consultants who works for me. If the house is really tight on the block, right? E.g., it's built close to the boundaries, right? It may not even be able to be built on there. Now, in this case, the example I had yesterday, we're having to cut the block so that the driveway can actually work and you can get your car into the driveway. Times gone by, we would have just dropped the garage, but you can't do that anymore unless you want to put a ramp in the garage. So we've had to cut the whole house slab area in that case. Sometimes you're either going to have to do that. Great, we've got a solution. Or you're going to have to pick a smaller home so that you can move the house back on the block, as an example. So you're going to have to sacrifice the design. Or possibly you can't even build on it. I was talking to a guy this week, and Colin, you'd love this one. It was in River Valley in Sunshine. And I went to Google Maps because he said, oh, it's got a bit of fall on it. And on Google Maps, all I could see was the footpath and no block.
Mm-hmm.
It had that much fall. I could not see the block. It was the best. I was laughing when I was showing one of my consultants. So it was pretty funny. You can't build on the thing. I don't know how you build on it. It's a house on stumps and somehow work out a garage. I don't know. It's beyond what we do, I guess, is it. And so pretty interesting. Number two, I guess this also applies to smaller housing code lots. I've had two examples in the last couple of months where the lot is a smaller housing lot. The neighbouring lot isn't. So it's a traditional res code lot. And what's actually happened is that our one, because the neighbour's already built, is now overshadowing the northern habitable windows on that home. And I know this is all a bit technical, but basically what it means is the house that the customer wants to build, they can't, right? So we've just picked up a deal off another builder because they've given up hope on that. They haven't been able to find a solution. We've been able to find a solution that complies, right? But this poor customer, they signed up for the house with the other builder 2.5 years ago. They've been a year back and forth trying to get a building permit because someone missed that regulation, and it's because they haven't sought the right advice. They bought the block of land and then they've gone to the builder, and now the builder's scrambling trying to find a solution. So in these two cases that I'm referring to, they've actually had to compromise the design that they want and end up with a much narrower house. Another one would be site costs, right? Could be the neighbouring block, could be as much as $10,000 different. Just my block here, right next door, the block's more expensive to build on. That could be fall, fill, an old dam site, many things like that. I often talk to people when they're in display homes and say, to build on this block, it's X dollars, $15,000 site costs. To build on the block directly over the road, it's $25,000. Which one would you choose? Right? The house will work really well on both. So it's understanding that. The other one right now is the block. If you're buying the block on its own, you may end up with a block that has the wrong orientation for the home that you like. So one, you may struggle or may not even be able to get the home to rate it 7-star. And two, even if you do, the home itself may be very dark once it's built. And so it's going to be, feel just not as homely and as enjoyable to live in. So there's a few examples as to why you should talk to a builder first before you buy a block of land.
I'd say, Darren, it's probably the most important one. Like,
Yep.
it's logical people get, financial advice. It's logical that you're going to talk to family and friends and take some of what they say into consideration, but really should make your own point. But it happens all the time. People buy a block without talking to a builder. And yes, you said it's technical. It is technical. That's the point. Like if you're not equipped and experienced to know what the implications are of compliance and site costs and everything that Darren just covered, then you should be talking to a new home builder's consultant. And it's not against developers or anti-developers. Just if they can save you 10K in site costs by picking the block across the road or three doors down, the pricing for that block isn't any different usually because of site costs, only if it's substantially different. But yeah, so please take that one on. That's really important.
As an example, that 10 grand puts a lot of really nice stuff in your kitchen.
Oh, it does, yeah.
You know,
So it
like
can
you got to,
save you money, can, yeah, get
yeah,
you some better value for your
can be
building
played
quote.
many ways.
Yeah. Number four, I think for me, this is one of the important ones is people are quite often unrealistic with perception versus reality. And the mistake that people make there is that they don't have a really clear needs versus wants list, and it's a bit like um, I guess champagne taste, beer budget. We've all sort of heard that, and that's pretty common. And part of that's because the industry's mistake and fault is because we provide as an industry display homes that are aspirational, and they've got things on there that you walk through and you go, "Wow, I'd love to have that." And then you talk to the consultant, and you say, "Hey, that amazing feature in the kitchen, I want to put that
Yeah,
in." And then they say, "Oh, yeah, that's $45,000," and you go, "No, thanks, I'm good." Like these things happen. They're aspirational for a reason because that's what people want to see. But when you
yeah,
get to that nitty gritty, when you're talking to someone, you're trying to get to the building quote stage, that's where you've got to have your needs and your wants based on point number one, your finance. Okay.
yeah,
So have your max budget, your min budget, and needs and wants as a result. Do you need the highest ceiling or can you settle for the middle? It's still an increased or raised ceiling, but, things like that you have to go through. So that's definitely one for me. Similar, I guess, with investment property. I guess in the same vein here, Darren, is people who are investors, whether that's investor offshore or interstate or local, far too emotive. Trying to put in, that perception versus reality again. Just putting in stuff you just don't need. You think you need them, and you think that a tenant gives a crap about it, but I can assure you they don't. Tenants do not care what your facade looks like. Pick one of the standard ones. If you spend 3 grand, 5 grand, 8 grand on a facade, it might help your resale value, fair. It won't change a tenant's mind, right? They're more about what's going on the inside. So things like that, just be mindful, needs and wants. Um, I think items that can be upgraded or installed later, additional like cabinetry for your TV, um, you could probably do those. I guess not necessarily needing to be done now. You could do those later. There's lots of I guess we've done a whole episode on that, Daz, haven't we? So
yeah,
people could go
absolutely.
backtrack on that, things that you could hold off and do later. Um, yeah, I think that's probably the main gist of it. So stick with your needs and wants. I think the biggest mistake there is people just don't do that. They're not diligent enough with their own budget there. Yeah.
Cool. I've got the last one, number five. So they choose the cheapest builder as if that's a good win for them. One I like to always refer to with people is the what's called the good, cheap, fast matrix. And what it says is you can only choose two. So it's cheap and fast, it won't be good. And if it's cheap and good, it won't be fast. And last of all, if it's fast and good, it won't be cheap. And if you just remind yourself of that every time you're trying to, work out where my pricing's at, if you're expecting to pay bugger all, then expect something's going to be compromised in that, is really what it's saying. So if you're really driving down on price, it's something's going to be compromised, whether that's service, whether that's quality, whether that's inclusion. There's going to be a reason why that builder is cheaper, significantly cheaper. That's number one. Often people don't realize what they're actually getting in that upfront cost. So what I mean in that example is, um, sorry, I've gone blank here for a second. Builder number two, for example, you got builder number one that's a cheaper price. Builder number two that's slightly more expensive has significant more inclusions in there. So you've got nicer stuff in the home, but it's more expensive. But so you just got to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. Is really it. Next one would be, builder number one. The cheap one will overcharge or charge excessive amounts for items during the colour selection. We've seen it time and time again, Colin. When you get beaten on price and then you hear later, oh, they went to the colour selection studio and spent 50 grand. Well, they would have spent 20 with you. And, they're 5 grand cheaper than you. And you're like, how does that happen? But they're not aware of that. Customers aren't aware. So often they have very limited choices within their standard inclusions or builders range inclusions. Um, they're often ugly, And an example that I would give is bricks. And we both worked for a builder where they prided themselves back then that they had ugly and uglier were the first two bricks you got to choose from because they wanted you to upgrade. That was part of their
Yeah.
plan. No, they
Yeah.
were. They were ugly and uglier. They were really rough, right?
Yeah.
So you knew everyone was going to go and spend more money, and that's part of the plan, right? So just ask those questions. How many am I getting? Can I see it? Can I go and do a tour of your color selection studio? If you're doing it off a color board, what do those colors look like? Don't just assume, so you know what you're getting, right? An example would be one builder gives you 2 bricks to choose from. That's their builder's range. Another builder gives you 6 or 7 bricks to choose from. That's their builder's range, category one. Why? Why are they different? There's not this category one is that particular builder's choice for that category. It's not every builder's choice. So they will choose what they put in and what they don't, and that's to try and control how much money they get you to spend. Because if they make it ugly enough, you're not going to want it, and you're going to want to upgrade it, right? So be mindful of that being the case. They neglect to cover items such as rock, right? So they say, oh, no, we'll fix the site cost, for example, but rock's not included. And so once you get on site and they discover rock, they come back and charge you 5 grand. You're already a long way down the path there. You're not turning around at that point. So they may have a provisional sum in your contract for rock, as an example. These are things just to be aware of. Again, I've worked for builders that have operated that way. I've worked for builders that have operated the other way. So, it's not to say one's right or wrong. It's just to be aware. Well, so you understand what's included and you don't, necessarily sign up for the cheapest and then get stung for this stuff along the way. The last one I've got on here, items you can't see that are compromised. An example of that would be concrete floor to an alfresco, right? There's different types of concrete floors to alfrescos. Some builders will include a structural concrete floor. I mean, it's got all the steel reinforcement. It's part of the slab of the home, right? It's significantly better. Others will do what they call a strip footing and then just pour a concrete slab over the top of the dirt that's there. It's much skinnier, much inferior in terms of look wise. They both look the same, but one's an inferior product. Some of the easy ones would be stuff like a zinc loom downpipe versus a colorbond downpipe. The colorbond downpipe's not going to need painting. It's going to last for a long, long time. I'm going to say 25 years is the warranty on a colorbond downpipe versus a zinc loom. It lasts as long as that sun will bake the paint off the downpipe, and next thing you're out there having to paint it. So another example would be double glazing versus smaller single glazed windows on a home. Again, it's often not shown. You get a pretty picture and a brochure plan. Doesn't show you what you're actually getting, right? So ask those questions and be aware, right? We see some homes, they don't put windows in certain rooms. So, for example, the ensuite doesn't have a window, but unless you're looking for the window, you don't realise. So then you build the house, we've got room for between my house and the boundary, so I can have a window, but they didn't put it in because it's cheaper to brick it. So those are some of the items to be aware of in our top 5 things to, things not to do.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, the cheapest builder one, we've said, 4,912 times, I think, on this podcast so far. But you choose the one you like. But the cheapest builder mistake is unfortunately one that you can only learn in hindsight. You don't know what you don't know. We are trying to give you that hindsight from a lot of experience that we've had. But at the end of the day, who are we? So you'll make your own decision the way you want to do it. But don't, for those who really value what we're trying to do here, the cheapest build is not actually your best result. It's just, it's not. The amount of phone calls, like you said, Darren, that you get, oh, I wish I had of, I wish I had of, oh, I missed this, I missed that. And they sort of feel like blaming the builder at the end, but the builders just strategically lowered their price, reduced their inclusions. That's it. It's a strategy. Like
Yeah.
we've had a episode on exactly that strategy and the others that builders use in terms of their promotions. Like go back and watch that, and you'll learn about how it's structured. But you know, the bottom line for me, Darren, when it comes to cheaper stuff, is if you've got a task to complete and you get someone who's really, really good at it and they charge you a bit more for it, and you get someone who's not really, really good at it, but they're okay at it and they charge less, you can choose which one you're going to pick. It doesn't matter, but you know that the
Absolutely.
one who's not as good at it is not going to give you as good a result. Very simple. But with building, there's so many suppliers and trades that, you know, if the people doing your brickwork paid a lot less than the next guy, you can expect your brickwork to be not as good as the next guy's. Like it is that simple. You know that, we know that, but still at the front end, you don't think about that stuff. You just think about, well, that's the price for them and that's the price for them. They're 10 grand cheaper. I'm going with them. For the sake of 10 or 15 grand, gosh, don't worry about it. Over the course of the loan, it's going to
Yeah.
mean absolutely nothing. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Correct.
we've said that once or twice, Daz. Guys, that concludes the 5 mistakes. Hopefully you've learnt a few things not to do there. We'll leave that with you. But thanks again for listening. Thanks for watching. Appreciate any feedback or questions or topic ideas if you want to send any of that stuff through. It's the homebuildinghub.com.au is our website. And also, please leave us a 5-star review on the platform you're on. That would be very helpful and we'd be grateful for that. And until next time, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for listening to the Home Building Hub. As part of the podcast, we have to be a little careful to cover ourselves on a legal standpoint. So we do have a disclaimer. Whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered legal or financial advice. It does contain general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your own personal situation before you make any legal or financial decisions.
1